EK Nation, and welcome to our very first edition of our new Roundtable show here on both Facebook and YouTube. My name is Rob Howden, joined by David Cole. So again, a brand new show. Our very first episode is December 20th, 2023. Christmas and New Year's just around the corner. And David, this thing all kind of rolling. We've talked a lot about doing a roundtable, eventually doing one. It took the column you wanted to write about the 20 potential location for the 2026 World Championships. And that kind of got you and I rolling, and we said, let's do this thing.
Yeah, it's, again, we're in the month of December, and that's when we wanted to start doing some of the roundtables, because the wintertime, people get a little restless. We see a lot of chatter on the social media, and what better time to get together in the winter months? There's not as much racing. Obviously, once January hits, everybody's going to be trackside in Florida, and then in February out on the West Coast as well too. So a lot of racing ahead, but now is a great time to get together, have a conversation, discussion about different topics. And this one, I did the article about the 25th anniversary of the Formula C World Championships that were held in Charlotte. And it kind of I kept that in my mind. And I got to the month of December. I'm like, I need to write this column up, because now is the perfect time to start the discussion, because we have essentially a year and a half before 2026 is here. So, or a year and, essentially 2 years, but in terms of planning and deciding where this is going to happen with the FIA and FIA karting, now is the time to start is there hope? Is there an idea? Because again, we're going to be celebrating the 70th anniversary of karting in 2026.
Obviously starting in 1956, California with Art Ingalls. So 70th anniversary, perfect opportunity to bring that event back here. And David, I think, one of the things, we have an absolute experienced veteran group that are going to join us here, track management, top driver, and then two players in terms of chassis importing, chassis manufacturing, race teams joining us here as well. But David, I think one of the key things is the fact that, the U.S. is such a huge market for karting. Any product that is in karting, obviously, the sport huge here. And I think that's probably the reason why, a little bit of the motivation for you to write that, saying, hey, you know what, we're a player in the sport. We deserve a major event.
Yeah, I mean, it's not so much the business side of it that triggered it. It's more of an emotional thing, but it does help the business side of things because of, as you said, the United States market is a pretty big one in terms of karting. I believe it was Ronnie Sala's interview recently. He said, I think Burrell Arts, 20% of their business is in the US. So that stuck in my head. It's like, man, that's a lot in terms of the world, because you look at all the different countries, especially Europe and Asia, all the different continents. That's a lot. So, but again, we're starting to see a little bit more of an influx of American racers also going to Europe as well too. And so we're not only, big in the market, but we're also in driver wise. And, we have a lot of world talent drivers. We have two that are on the panel here tonight as well, that have taken races in Europe and the world championships as well. So, it's a little bit of everything, kind of just sentimental, a business side of things. And the fact that, again, the US is where everything began.
So those of you tuning in, we're going to bring our guys in here momentarily. Remember, this is an interactive show, so if you have any comments, thoughts, insights, just feel free to drop them in the comments. They come up to us here in the studio. We'll be able to bring them in potentially and have our guys comment on that as well. So it is interactive. If you do have some thoughts, feel free to post them here on Facebook or on, of course, our YouTube channel, where this show will be home and be held for the most of the time. So, David, let's get things underway. Let's start bringing in our crew here, because we have ourselves, as I said, a star-studded lineup. From CRG Nordam, we have Euan Jeffery from Castle Motorsports Park. We have Mike Adams, Gary Carlton from GFC Karting, and Danny Formal from Rolison Performance Group, the winner of the KZ category Pro Shifter this past November at the Super Nationals. Guys, thank you for taking the time. We appreciate you coming and joining us today.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
It's a good lineup here, Cole. You're muted.
I was going to type, sorry. They're all the first people we asked too. So that was a great thing.
That's true enough. All right, guys. So here's how we're going to kind of roll into this, because obviously the topic we've talked about, could we get, or should we get, a World Championship event, CIKFI World Championship event here in the U.S. Let's start with you. And what are your thoughts? Should we get one, and why?
I'll be honest with you, it would be one of the best things for the US. For the US karting market especially, I think it would be one of the best things that could happen to have such a big race of that magnitude brought here to the States. It's going to be a difficult kind of topic regarding classes more than anything, because obviously the only kind of setback could be the difference with the classes compared to how they do it in Europe at the normal CIK races that they do over there. Would it benefit karting in the US? For sure. It would bring a huge amount of kind of visual attraction to the US karting market in general. And plus, it would for sure make some tracks up their game even more. And don't get me wrong, some of these tracks in the US are fantastic. Good layouts, good kind of atmospheres at the tracks and everything. The only thing is, obviously, for sure, to get the race here in the US, it would be quite a big investment for any track here to get up to kind of scratch of where they would need to be.
Well, that's a perfect segue into Mike Adams, of course, the manager at Newcastle Motorsports Park for a couple of decades. Mike, is that something that would interest you guys at Newcastle? Let's put it this way: you've had essentially every major event, every major series has come to Newcastle, and does almost every year. You guys are kind of one of the key points, especially in the Midwest. What are your thoughts on a potential World Championship at Newcastle? Is it something you guys would talk about?
No, absolutely. I'd love to have something, of that magnitude here. I think it would be, very cool not only to showcase our facility, showcase the, karting in the U.S. in general. Obviously I'm biased, would love to have it at Newcastle, but just to have it in the U.S., I think would be, something that I think it would be good, like Euan said, for the sport of karting here. As far as the investment goes, I've actually started talking to, some people a little bit about that. Not something that, obviously would be taken lightly. I know there's some avenues as well as just, the putting everything in ourselves to get some help here and there along the way, but would absolutely be interested in seeing what needed to be done, how we could get there, and working with, the organizations to make that happen.
Very interesting. Gary, we'll come to you, and then Danny, obviously a big player in the industry itself now with GFC Karting, but you've raced yourself, competed in World Championship events. What are your thoughts on potentially getting a World Championship race here in the U.S.?
Obviously, for a company like mine being based out of America, it'd make it a lot easier to segue into international markets, because naturally it'd be followed by everyone in the world. The investment of doing a race here in the States is obviously a lot less for a company like myself to then go and do it in any other part of the world if it's not based in North America. So naturally, I'd be pushing for it. I mean, as a company, we are going to be going and doing the World Championship next year in Portugal to try to expand out and get recognition, worldwide, and not just here in North America. But yeah, naturally, for a race in the U.S., be a lot easier for us. And to showcase American karting, I don't know if it would do that as much as it would just give American drivers and American-based teams a better shot at putting themselves against world-class drivers and world-class teams, which we do see in certain categories, like in the race in Las Vegas and whatnot. The only thing I would wish, I'm sure Euan remembers when we used to do those, like what I call like flyaway races when we went in Egypt, and when we came to the New Jersey, when we were shipping everything in containers and whatnot. I remember at least here in the States, we shipped it to an importer, where in Egypt we had to ship everything there and then ship everything back. And I vividly remember us going through the garbage cans and getting the brake cleaner that we used, because the customs office said, well, you brought it in, you got to take it back out. So us having those logistical problems, I think, would probably be the only downfall of all these teams looking to come out here. But it could be different as well, because like I said, it didn't seem like we had that many problems when we did the race in New Jersey, as all the importers seemed to take the material after the race was done with. So
yeah, that's those WSK races that we had in New Jersey. That's right. That was again, that's a topic we'll come up with, how to facilitate. That's something we can talk about, is for the European manufacturers, would you have to work with obviously your importer to kind of run the program here. Now let's wrap up the first run through the rotation here with Danny Formal. Danny, obviously you're the only active driver here winning the Super Nationals. You know what you have, what it takes. What would it mean to you? I know you're not going to say, no, I don't want to have a World Championship here. What would it mean to you to be able to have a World Championship at a track, and in your home country.
No, for sure. I think that the closest thing that I had to that was at NOLA in 2013. Actually, that's where me and Euan got quite close, and the season after I raced with him in Europe in DD2.
The curb master.
I was in the table. I was on the table after every session with Ben.
Yeah, you were.
Kingpin.
I remember.
Ben Kingpins. I was actually trying to be super nice to Euan so he didn't charge me the chassis. But yeah, it would be.
I should have done.
I know you 100%.
The only track that had to get changed because of one driver.
Exactly. Pretty much, right? But anyways, yeah, I think it'd be great. I think like Gary, you and Mike said it, I think for the karting in the United States, we need something like that. I think we have something. It's not as close to a world championship, but we get drivers from all over the world, which is, in Vegas every year. But it's a different story when it's a racetrack, right? You get those guys in a track like Newcastle, let's say. It's a whole different story than racing them at, a parking lot. So I think for the karting, it'd be great. I'd love to participate. I'd have to probably chop my legs off because they race about 20 pounds lighter than we do here. So yeah, I don't know how to make that weight. And yeah, screws in parking lots, it helps, but anywhere else it doesn't. So yeah, but I think it'd be something very beneficial. Like Euan said, I think the OK and OK Junior category is a little bit different because we really don't race that right now in the States. We only race KZ2. But apart from that, I think we have a few tracks across the country that are definitely capable of hosting a world championship event.
Well, Danny, I'm going to segue into this because you mentioned something about it. We had obviously Super Nationals where we do have a lot of international drivers come. We had obviously the world champion, European champion, and other champions come over the last few years. Do you think, though, a temporary circuit kind of hinders people from coming over from Europe and racing here in the United States to an event like the Super Nationals, where if we had a world championship at a proper facility, a racetrack, it would entice more of the drivers who race internationally to come here and race?
Actually, I don't think so. I think Supernats, the being one of a kind, let's say, is something that people like. I believe that. I believe that most of the factory drivers in KZ, they don't decide what they race. Their manufacturer decides what they race. So I don't think that really matters so much at that point. I could be wrong. Gary and you know more about that stuff than I do. But I think I do like a parking lot racetrack just because we get there on Wednesday and everyone gets there on Wednesday. No one knows the layout. No 6 months of testing before how they do for the World Championship. They start testing for the World Championship in Portugal probably 2 weeks from now. Like it's crazy how much time they get testing, how much testing they do. I do like that situation of 5 practice sessions and let's go racing. I definitely enjoy that, and I think it's beneficial for drivers to learn the track quickly, mechanics, engine builders, everything. So I don't think that's a really big effect. I think obviously we call it a CIK. If you call it Supernats at CIK World Championship, we probably have 140 in KZ. But it's not. It's called Supernats, and it's not an official CIK race. So I don't think so. I think it'd be a huge event if the World Championship was done here. But I think it'd be just a big event because it's just another World Championship, and every World Championship, you watch CIK, FIA. There's 122, 125 in KZ2. You got 40 of the factory guys in KZ, and then again OK and OKJ again 100 plus drivers. So I think that has to do a lot with the name and what it means to become a CIK world champion.
Obviously the first thing is just would be to get the FIA, CIK even to just consider, right? Put it in their mind that they want to kind of start walking down that road. But the first thing then would be kind of like the venue. You've talked a little bit about what it would take. Let's just talk venues first. What do you guys think in terms of what's the short list of tracks that could, number one, hold that kind of an event, that the size of the paddock and the track itself? We pause this show for a quick commercial break. Stay tuned for more here on the EKN Radio Network. Ready to step up your game? Joining the Rolison Performance Group is the obvious choice to take your racing to the next level. Industry-leading driver development is provided by our staff of multi-time national champions, Super Nationals winners, and Team USA members. And at the same time, RPG continues to be a national-level powerhouse race team. Our goal is to help you raise your game and win races. We work with all age groups and are focused on developing those cadet and junior drivers who are ready to take the next step in their racing program. Rolison Performance Group has set a new standard with our in-house engine program, AVP Engines, headed by Alex Vincent. AVP has become the benchmark in IAME competition. We have the largest OTK inventory that follows our race team, providing trackside parts at all the major events in North America. RPG also offers multilingual support with French, Spanish, and Portuguese-speaking staff. If you want to fight for championships or want to improve your skills and your chances to win, the answer is to call RPG at 503-260-4514. The Rolison Performance Group. We race to win. For over 20 years, Greg Bell has been building race-winning power for kart racers. One need only look at his team, Leading Edge Motorsports. He's always built engines for his team, and the results have been wins at the biggest races in America, the SCUSA Super Nationals and the Rock Vegas events. The name on this program? Mega Power. This year alone, Bell and Danny Formel teamed up to sweep the Rock Shifter class on the Florida Winter Tour, all on a Mega Power engine. If you want to win shifter kart races, it's time to put Mega Power on your kart. Mega Power specializes in gearbox engines, such as the TMKZ, Rock Shifter, and IAME Shifter, but with almost 3 decades of engine building experience, Bell develops winning motors for X30 and Mini Swift and everything in between. The combination of Greg Bell's engine building skills and his chassis tuning knowledge is a potent mixture. Greg's helped catapult many drivers to wins over the years, including Mercedes F1 star George Russell, who won the Supernats 14 in 2011 with Leading Edge Motorsports. Increase your odds of winning at this year's Rock Vegas or Super National events or throughout 2023 by calling Greg Bell today at 209-747-2613 to put Mega Power in your corner. Acceleration Kart Racing is your first and only stop on the internet for karts, parts, and the safety gear you need to get you on the track. Visit shopakr.com for a great selection of karting equipment on a user-friendly website. Acceleration Kart Racing has aligned itself with many of the top manufacturers and distributors in the sport to ensure all the latest equipment is available to you, the racer. With over 20 years in business and customer support available 6 days a week, you can be confident about getting the right parts at the right price when you need them. Be sure to visit shopakr.com today or stop by their headquarters in Las Vegas. Make sure to follow Acceleration Kart Racing on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram for the latest specials and new arrivals. Thank you for listening to the EKN Radio Network. We now join the show already in progress. I
can start. There are a few different tracks. Obviously, Newcastle for sure being one of them. And that, as far as the facilities and the layout and everything, for sure Newcastle would be right up there. There's a lot of other good tracks. Obviously, Trackhouse Motorplex over in the East Coast. Obviously, I don't want to miss anybody out and offend anybody, but the main ones that you would think of at the moment, if you went East Coast, you would say Trackhouse around about there, because obviously it's a very, very, very nice facility as far as the East Coast goes in the whole of the US. Going more to the Midwest, for sure, 100%. I would definitely pick Newcastle. You've got NOLA Motorsports Park. You've got even close to us, you got Speed Sports. Yeah. Speed Sports might be very tight on the paddock size and everything. USPKS, we managed it and we got through it. So I don't see any reason why that. But picking the location, yes, it's important, the track, but it has to be an important location logistically also for the people that are traveling in from outside the United States. Because at the end of the day, if people are flying in from Europe to fly to the East Coast or to fly to the Midwest, it's a lot easier than flying to the whole West Coast, and it's also from a logistical side and everything as well. There's a handful of tracks that you could pick. The only issue that there could be is, and obviously I've been doing all the European races for like a long, long time now, and obviously I've been lucky over the years being team manager at CRG for the official team that I've been able to get a lot better understanding of the CIK rules and the FIA homologation stuff, all the ins and outs, and obviously I've got some good friends that still work within that. It's a complicated process, very, very complicated process, and it's not just a case of filling in a couple of forms and just that's homologation done. If it was only that easy, honestly, it'd be awesome. But it's a long, long process, and like it could take up to a year to even get a track close to being homologated. And I'm not going to mention any track names, but like it's one of these things that it's such a big investment for a track that if we're racing here in the US, we consider all the tracks here to be top level and everything, but the problem we have at the moment is that the CIK, and I sent you the document this afternoon, and the stipulations that they put out of what they need as a CIK homologated track. Is it too much? You can't argue though, and it's one of these things. It's a really, really, really difficult thing to do, and it just takes a lot of time, money, investment in the track. And I think it would be one of the best things because in the end, we're going to make a good track here in the US in a world-class circuit, like literally world-class circuit, because it's not even just people think about the track homologation just being the track layout, but there's so much more to it, even down to facilities, electric in the paddock, and there's so many stipulations on the CIK homologation for this that, there's a lot of demands to meet.
Interesting. You mentioned travel. I think probably the furthest west you could probably go looking at a track would probably be Utah. I would think Salt Lake City at Utah Motorsports Campus. Obviously, NOLA Motorsports Park as well. I think one that would be into consideration as well. Gary, what are your thoughts on that? Those kind of tracks we've talked about. You think that's kind of what we'd be looking at?
I mean, I think for the logistics side on people getting to the racetrack, it really wouldn't matter if you're going from the West Coast to the East Coast on flights. I mean, flights from the West Coast, from San Francisco, from New York to Italy, it's peanuts in comparison of what the price differences are. It'd be more so. It'd be interesting to see because maybe a lot of the big manufacturers that are going to be coming over would be sending material to their importers, and then the importer would be driving to the facility. And then but it would be a majority of let's say X class, like class X, it would be OKJ or whatnot, are not going to be necessarily all factory teams. So how are they going to get their material to the track, and what's the logistics on that is probably going to play a bigger role in who actually shows up to the race and if there's going to be enough people to get there. So is it going to be a thing where the track has the closest ports, the logistics side is so much less? I mean, that's the one thing we'd also have to look to, because it needs to make it viable for the teams. I know when we did, I had that example when we did it in Egypt, they made it easier for the teams to go do this. I mean, we can't just say, okay, we're going to have a race and we hope everyone shows up. You're going to have things in place for those smaller teams that maybe don't have an importer to bring those drivers in, because as long as the dream, yes, I mean, we'd love to have the race here in the U.S., and I'm sure a lot of USA drivers would come do this event. But in theory, the teams and the drivers really make the event. If we had every World Championships caliber driver, all the best drivers come up and show up and do a club race anywhere, would be considered a big event, because it's the drivers and the teams and everything. They make the event. Naturally, I know the name of it makes a big deal, but also the teams. I mean, that's why people want to go to World Championship events, because it has the big name drivers, the big name teams, and we got to make sure all those other teams too can come to the event as well, logistically, the easiest as possible. And I think the CIK and the FIA and the teams that were coming from Europe would definitely have to get together and make it viable and easier for them as well before we even think the track and the facility, like Euan said, it has to be at the level of CIK and the FIA, which would be difficult. But then getting people to go, hey, let's go do this, because, I mean, it wasn't too long ago where this FIA said they're going to do their World Championship in Brazil everyone got together and said, no, we're not doing it because it's going to cost too much. And they ended up not doing the race in Brazil. So we'd have to make it where the teams are not going to go against it too, because I would hate to see someone like Mike put all this money into his track and then them not show up. And I mean, it's kind of a black eye on America too. Like, oh, they were going to go there. Why didn't they go? Kind of thing as well.
Yeah, we'd want to have everybody on board, right? 100% on that. Mike, as a track manager and part of, obviously the family ownership at Newcastle, have you guys ever looked into potentially trying to get upgraded in terms of FICIK status?
Not completely. Pardon me. When it was originally built, I know that, the track width and that kind of stuff, I know Mark took that into consideration. But as far as, the rest of it, I have actually reached out and will do some research on what that is. I mean, it was something that, as you guys are talking about it now, we've been talking about it not for very long, maybe call it 6 months, thinking about that may be the next thing that we'd like to see there. And so in this off season, that is going to be something that I'm going to look into relatively heavily.
Let's talk a little bit about then I guess really the categories. You mentioned that earlier a little bit. Obviously, KZ and KZ2 would be the primary one that we kind of support. We really just don't. You really don't have enough of the OKN, and we don't even have OKN Junior at all. I can't see. I think that would be the toughest sell. I don't know that they want it. We don't have that much OKN racing over here.
But it goes back to pretty much what Gary was just saying about the World Championship that was proposed in Brazil. It was a very similar situation because in the end, one of the other reasons why they didn't do the World Championships in Brazil is because Brazil have to manufacture their own chassis there because they have to use Brazilian-made products. So if you went and did a Brazilian World Championships, in the end, it's going to be so much added cost for everybody because they have to ship all the material back in the end after the race. Whereas, chassis-wise for the manufacturers, honestly, does it change much having it here in the US or in Europe? Not really, because at the end of the day, the stuff would be left here in the US stateside anyway. So that would be perfectly fine. As far as the classes go, what would benefit the US market most? That's kind of, I think, probably the point where how you need to look at it. Having an OK Junior and OK Senior World Championship, would that benefit the US? In my personal opinion, not really at this moment in time, because in the end, they don't even entertain the classes over here.
Would it potentially cause some motivation for people to get into that category? Would it jumpstart the class here?
Jumpstarting the class here, the problem is there's too many cooks in the kitchen, in my opinion.
Yeah.
And I'm not, like I said, I'm not going to mention any names they're at, but in the end, there's too many cooks in the kitchen. And the problem is, it's very difficult to streamline anything. The thing that obviously at this moment that streamline things is pretty much all the series going to the KZ category and then sticking with Miami, which honestly, it makes everybody's life a lot easier when it's streamlined. Don't get me wrong. But the problem is we're kind of a little bit alienated from doing a world championship for an OK Junior and OK Senior. So do I see a benefit in doing the world championships with OK and OK? Not really. Not unless a lot of these promoters over here that do all their own, kind of single championships jumped on board and said, oh, hey, let's go and do the OK. To be perfectly honest, the only class that would suit everything at this moment in time would be the shifter, because it's the only thing that the category that you race over there, the category you race over here. It's very, very different about the whole thing there, and it's sad because the problem is we kind of separate ourselves from the other side of the world a little bit, that's kind of my 2 cents on the class thing. It could be good. We could get a one-off world championships where you take all 4 categories. You take all the KZ categories and all the OK categories, and you come across and do one big world championships. That would be cool, But obviously, I think that would go down to the FIA promoter and how they would look at organizing the world champs,
And you did mention that you feel that that the industry-wise, obviously all the manufacturers coming over, shipping everything over here to kind of work with their importers and their teams here in the U.S., that there's the market that would be able to purchase all the used carts that are here. It's a lot of material that will get brought over.
Yeah, for sure. But it wouldn't. I don't honestly see it being a problem on a cart side. on a kart side and a part side and everything. At the end of the day, you know, we've got a warehouse here in Texas, and we've got, you know, probably upwards of $1 million worth of inventory, easy. You know, but at the end of the day, would it be a problem having parts and carts and everything shipped across? No. If anything, it makes everything better because it just adds to the inventory that we've got here. You know, it's not a make or break kind of thing. If anything, it helps everybody.
Gary, you were talking about how it'd be more difficult for some of the smaller teams and manufacturers to bring their stuff over. But couldn't you see that as an opportunity for them? Because as yourself, you're a smaller brand in terms of the worldwide stage. Do you see it as an opportunity for them to maybe get exposure here in the U.S. and start an importership here in the U.S. with somebody who's looking for something new? Or, you know, again, when you're going over there, as you say you are in 2024, that's kind of your opportunity to showcase your brand to the European market and possibly add European dealers for your brand as well.
100%, and I guess I should have worded that a little bit differently. It is going to be a good opportunity because I'm doing exactly the same thing, but obviously in the opposite way. But I was just, I guess, trying to say that we need to make it sure that it's easy for those types of teams, because I mean it's one of those things. And I've seen a lot of people, I guess the general public, at least here in the U.S., looks at, well, what determines a big race is the number of drivers. They always talk about numbers, and which I don't quite agree with. I think it's the depth of talent and the depth of teams that do come to the races. But to get, I think, people at least excited here in the U.S. about different categories or different karts or anything else, they need to have those big numbers, right? Everyone's focused on these numbers, and which maybe to their fault or my fault is right or wrong, I don't know, but I think we just got to make sure. I guess I'm always that type of guy, like, oh, it's good to dream of it, but I'm automatically the person that looks like, well, okay, what would be the problems? How would we have to fix this? How could we do it? Because naturally, I mean, yeah, I'd love to see it come to the U.S., but I have stipulations because I'm going through this same process right now, but trying to going over to Europe as well.
And in my original article, I brought up Charlotte. You know, I talked about it in the beginning. You have a facility there that has a huge, massive garage space. You know, because you look at logistics wise, and maybe for you and you yourself, you know, tents. You know, that's a big overhaul. That's a lot. You got, you know, when you go to Supernats, everybody's got to rent tents, or if they have too many drivers. You know, so is Charlotte a possibility? You know, because again, you're working with a corporation that could put a lot of money into their racetrack to make sure it's homologated, make sure you know, has everything it needs, but also on a promotional side, they could dump a lot of money into promoting the sport of karting with a world championship coming to a facility like that. Do you think that's maybe enticing for factories and teams coming over? Hey, you just have to drop it here and then crate it back up and then ship it back home. That's, you know, is that something you think would work there, and possibly as a possible facility? What you guys think about Charlotte?
I mean, I remember when we did the races in Egypt, they had like tents for us, or kind of like the Rotax style thing. If the track could facilitate tents or garages or some type of covering for the teams, and obviously it takes one. I know myself included, like I'm going to this world champion and looking and say, okay, do I need to rent a tent? Do I need to buy a tent, leave a tent? I mean, so if that's one thing where you knew you could come to an event and they'd have proper tents for you that you just, then yes, I mean, I'm sure it would take a lot of.
I think all in all, Gary, though, it's that the tent part, let's say, as far as the logistics go, it's one of the minimal thing. It's probably, you know, and I mean, doing the race over here, I'm not saying, because everybody in the end that would be coming over from Europe, they would be able to rely on a manufacturer more or less. Because in the end, if you look at the list of manufacturers, more or less, they'd always be able to rely on pretty much somebody. Because you know, most of the karts are, you know, linked to the manufacturer, and that's why European karting is very different compared to the US. Because, you know, even you have all the teams over, even the private teams over in Europe, all the teams are linked to the factories in some way. You know, they rely on the factories a lot more than obviously than a team would in another country. All the teams that do the European races and the World Championships are all quite closely linked with the factories. So in the end, it would all go down to the main kind of importers for each product dotted around the US.
One thing that I want to change topics a little bit is, what would it take to potentially make this discussion happen at the CIK? Would it take more drivers potentially going over and running in more European events? Danny, you talked about the fact in 2013 we connected with you and you got a chance to go run with them over in Europe. What was your experience? Let's just talk about your experience the first time you got a chance to run a World Championship event. We pause this show for a quick commercial break. Stay tuned for more here on the EKN Radio Network. It all started in 1994 when former successful kart driver Albino Parolin decided to move his passion for karting from the track to his small workshop. That's when Parolin was born. Fast forward 20 years, and Parolin's passion for the sport led to the company rejoining international competitions as a factory team in WSK and CIK FIA races, with the aim of enhancing the research and development process, immediately achieving notable results around Europe, North America, and Asia, becoming the CIK FIA Asia Pacific KZ champion in the same year. Parolin USA is North America's source for Parolin products, and we run a factory team at all of the major Superkarts USA and Rock Cup USA events. The Parolin chassis lineup for 2021 includes the Invader Shifter, the Le Mans Tag single-speed chassis for junior and senior classes, and the 28mm mini kart for the cadet classes. Parolin has been winning races all over the world, and it's on top of the podium in the USA as well, with drivers like Kai Sorensen, Mateus Orjuela, and Alessandro De Tullio. Get on the chassis that's winning. Drive a Parolin. For more information, head to ParolinUSA.com. Fast, fair, and fun. Ignite Karting offers you all of that at an affordable price. Ignite Karting utilizes the spec Margay Ignite K3 with a Briggs & Stratton 206 engine and a Hoosier R80 tire. Everyone in the junior, senior, and masters classes compete on the same Ignite K3 chassis, which puts all the emphasis squarely on driver development. Additionally, Ignite Karting is accessible at the local, regional, and national level. Special events for the 2023 season include the Ignite Majors, which begins with the annual trip to the Daytona International Speedway as part of the WKA Daytona Kart Week as part of both the sprint and road racing events. Those in the Midwest can enjoy the regionally based Ignite Challenge, which just finished up a record-setting season in 2022. Local club programs have also been established in other states all across the country, from Idaho to Texas, Nebraska to New York, with more tracks and clubs joining the Ignite Karting program. Be part of fast fun and great memories with Margay Racing at an Ignite track near you. All information on Ignite events and Ignite kart packages, including dealers in your area, are available at ignitekarting.com. Get off the couch and out onto the track in 2023. Ignite Karting. Fuel your passion. History, success, family. Those are the three words that can describe Comet Kart Sales, one of the longest tenured karting businesses in the United States. The family-owned operation located just outside of Indianapolis has provided karts, parts, and services for thousands of racers in the near 6 decades of business. Their online store features everything you need, continually adding new parts to their product line. From full karting packages, new engines, spare or replacement parts, and safety gear, find it all at CometKartSales.com. Their Comet Racing Engine service has won multiple major events and championships over decades of karting and continues to offer the best trackside service in the industry, specializing in IAME X30, IAME Swift, and other 2-cycle power plants. Make sure to head to CometKartSales.com or call them at 317-462-3413 to be part of the Comet Kart Sales family today. Thank you for listening to the EKN Radio Network. We now join the show already in progress.
I think is it mic working? Was it going crazy for you? Hold on.
Yeah, it was going a bit wacky.
Your mic was wild on us.
Yeah, your mic's, yeah.
It's good. Are we good?
No, hold on. We'll get you back on. We'll see what we can do. Hold on. Go ahead, Rob.
Gary, let's ask you that question. When you went to Europe, how did that change you as a driver? Is it something that some of the young drivers over here may want to look at a little more in terms of experience?
100%. I think it changed me as a driver just because at my time of karting here in the U.S., I would say the level of driving was a lot lower than what it is now. I think we've seen a lot of European influence either coming over to the States, and with a lot more drivers going over to Europe as well. I mean, there's no question about it. If you took a driver at 12 years old and went up against my 12-year-old self, he would smoke me. He or she would absolutely destroy me because the level in karting in the U.S. has gone up tenfold since my heyday of, the Stars of Karting Championship and whatnot. So, will it help them? Yes, 100%, but not as much as it was, 20 years ago by any means, because I think the factories over in Europe have more support here in the U.S. and bringing more support in other drivers. So naturally, it has risen the level of USA karting to a point where you can see a lot of these drivers, especially in the younger categories, maybe not the really experienced categories like KZ, but any category like OKN, OKNJ or OKJ and all those categories. A lot of the American drivers go over there and maybe they struggle a little bit with the grip situation because there's a little bit higher grip over there, but they don't do as bad as where we used to do back if it was like a win, like you'd hear in America, like, he made the final. What a great race he had. Now it's like, no, they're people. We have people winning races, aka Logan Sargent, and won a world championship. So I think, yes, would they learn 100%? But it's not like it was 20 years ago when you see one driver go over to Europe do a season and come back to the States and actually start mopping everybody up really easily, and because of all the things they learned from Europe. It's yes, would you learn, but not as much as 20 years ago, because thankfully we can all say the level in America has risen substantially.
And that's interesting because we talk a little bit there. We mentioned having to have everybody kind of on board, right? The CIK would have to want it. The manufacturers would have to all be on board. And Greg Welch is a good quote from Greg Welch. Says, I don't see a benefit to the U.S. because of what Euan said in regards to the engines. To me, the manufacturers that want to improve their market share have plenty of good race opportunities with the USPKS, Supernats, Rock Vegas, Pro Tour, etc. What are your thoughts on that, guys? Is for manufacturers in Europe, would there even be motivation to have a world championship here, or are they getting what they need industry-wise from what we already have here? Euan, start with you.
If you want, I can go. So I actually had a conversation on the phone with Mr. Tonini, the owner from CRG today, regarding this roundtable discussion that we're having now. Because I was curious to know his opinion on this situation before we even had the roundtable. And, he was quite keen on the idea, but even the first thing that he said and the first thing that came to mind,
I can hear you, Dan.
What's the point? He said, what's the point if we don't even use these classes over there?
Yeah,
literally that. And he's not wrong, and it's very, very difficult to, come and race something over here and most people won't even know what it is type thing. It's not an easy kind of situation with the class thing.
It's interesting because you go back and look at back 25 years ago at Charlotte when we had the Formula C World Championships here, and we didn't run Formula C, right? There was no Formula C really. They ran at the Supernats a couple of years later, but we ran the Hondas back then. And same when we had the Formula A and Super A, we didn't run that really over here as well. Now they did have the Constructors Championship with WK at one point, but it's interesting because back then there really wasn't those categories here, but they still had the major events, the North American Karting Championships. But obviously that's really good input from Mr. Tonini about the questions he would have regarding whether or not it's even viable or needed.
No, I think the part of it being viable, it's always going to be viable. To organize, and it was like what Gary said before about we've organized and managed to organize races on the other side of the world in Japan, China, Asia, all over that section. And is it difficult to organize? Not really. Once you've organized the logistics part from the office and literally got everything going, that's the easiest part nearly. It's all the other stuff, the logistical part, organizing the travel for all your staff and everything, that becomes a little bit more complicated. But the actual logistics part for the material, it's not super difficult, and it's more down to, would it be feasible to do the race? Would there be interest? 100% there would be interest from probably all the manufacturers, because it's a big market for everybody.
Yeah. Gary, obviously you feel the same way. That obviously, the market you're working on here, the growth that you've had with GFC over the last couple of years, and indeed you're already saying that you want to go to the World Championships in Europe just for your brand alone, right?
Correct. So I mean, naturally, if they had it here in the U.S., it'd make it a lot easier for us to facilitate it. But I think the biggest thing, like Mr. Zini and Euan said, it's having the same engine platform is going to be the viable thing to, if we're sitting here trying to promote karting, I mean, I guess it would be the whole idea. Are we trying to promote karting in the U.S.? But if you came to the U.S. and had people come over and start doing more races here in the U.S., you'd have to have that category that they want to come do if they were going to come do here the World Championship, because it'd be like just another one-off event for them, and it wouldn't keep them coming back, which I think that's been one great growth here in the States, is one, having it being, the live streams that all you guys have been doing, and getting that depth on that is good for a company like myself, seeing that, but then also getting more European and other drivers from all over the world to come raise our level of karting as well has been great. But is it a thing where having an event like that with an engine that we don't support, it would be hard to justify it, it wouldn't be a long-term handling, just kind of like something cool to do. That was fun. Be helpful for someone like myself and the American drivers to have a better shot, to have a good chance of doing well at a race that they may know the track or the grip levels might be more or less the same that they're used to. But after, will we see anything come of it? That'd be the thing where we'd want to look at, because if we're going to put this much effort and time, we would like to try to benefit from the investment that we'd all put into it.
Yeah, it's interesting because obviously the OKN category, it obviously was ran last year in the Challenge in the Americas. It was run in the Stars Championship. Would that be something we'd have to focus on, you guys? You would think maybe whether or not they see growth this year? Obviously they had certain numbers last year. They would have to continue to see growth, I think, to potentially make the CIK look at it. Euan, you think that's kind of along the right line?
Principally, the big problem that there is at the moment, that there's no one general body here in the US that says, this is the rule.
Yeah.
This is how it is. And this is how we're doing it. And don't get me wrong, it's not an easy thing to do because the US is such a big place.
We're still the Wild West of karting. We know that.
No, but honestly, and that's why a lot of people love the US. I had a conversation with somebody today, and that was literally the description they used. I love the US. It's like the Wild West. And I'm like, all right, okay. But, it's one
especially
of these
in Texas, right?
But honestly, it's one of the things at the moment that it's just very, very difficult, to get people to come together. It's literally like being in politics, because it's difficult because you got one promoter that wants one thing, you got another promoter that wants another, and a lot of times they do come together and agree on things and everything, but when it comes down to and I think you said USAC's obviously the licensing body at the moment, I think, for the US, but the problem is, what's the involvement in karting?
Yeah, USAC's only done a little bit. USAC is obviously the connection to ACUS, which is the FIA ASN here. And then, you're right. They don't have that much of a contact anymore at all.
And that's going to be one of the biggest hurdles and challenges to do anything. Because, and even from Mike's standpoint, looking into the FIA homologation and stuff for the track, in the end, so when you present a homologation for a request for a track homologation, okay, you actually have to, you're not allowed to just call the FIA and say, I want a track homologation. No, you actually have to go through the proper channels, and you have to present it to your ASN. And then afterwards from the ASN, they need, the actual ASN for their country needs to present the request to the FIA. Yeah. So, in the end, the big problem is at the moment that, it would be great to have it. And I would love it, because at the end of the day, even for Newcastle, if they have to spend, $200,000, $300,000, $400,000, $500 on their $500,000 on their track now, it would make a good track awesome. Even better than it is. And to be fair, Newcastle's a track that everybody loves going to. And it's one of these things that, yes, it works out in everybody's favor, but you just need to see if it is worth the investment in the end. Because if somebody has to take out that big an investment for one race, because at the end of the day, you're talking about doing that investment for one race. Yeah. Yes, you make a good track afterwards, and you make a big, fantastic facility, but is it worth it? And it's hard. It's hard because
a track in Europe can do that, but they're going to get European championship races. They're going to get all these different events, right? We're kind of relying on
multiple races throughout the year.
Yeah, we're asking the Dismores to drop $500,000 potentially and to get one race.
Well, and to that point, though, if it was something that we looked into this, maybe it's something where you go, okay, we do one now, and then in the next 5 to 7 years, you get another one. To where it kind of at least amortizes it over 2 races, and then after that, whatever. But somehow you work that into where there's one, and then 5 to 7 years later, you've got another one back.
Yeah, or Rotax Grand Finals or something like that.
Right.
Well.
Right.
Okay.
Yeah, because in all honesty, 2026, Rotax Grand Finals could be that world championship in a way, because that, it's different from FIA, but in my terms, it's one of the biggest karting events in the world as well. And we call it the Olympics of karting, because that's essentially what it is, with 60 some countries coming together, 384 drivers that were in Bahrain this year. We've seen it at NOLA Motorsports Park. It was an amazing event. Great. We had our first ever USA champion crown there with Juan Manuel Carrera. We had Oliver Askew on the podium. We had Joey Winstead on the podium. We won the Nations Cup. I mean, as an American, that was probably one of the greatest moments in karting history for me to witness. And so that's another avenue as well too, because we're seeing a big push by Race Rotax and J3 competition, along with RTX karting down in the southern part of the country as well too. So that's also another option as well. So if FIA says no, there's that avenue. Maybe we can get Rotax on board with bringing that event back. And again, similar to what we've already talked about, they come here, they drop the carts. It's and then they leave the carts, or they give them to Acceleration or Sodi Racing USA or PSL Karting with Burrell Art. Who are the other manufacturers? Praga is the other manufacturer, where they leave the carts here, or they sell them pre-race. So I'd love to see either. I think if I were to rank it, I think it would be the KZ World Championship, Rotax Grand Finals, and then the OK, because as you guys have mentioned throughout the show, I think the market here in the US, it won't dictate to the OK and OK Junior categories. We just don't have it here. And I think the other two platforms might be the better opportunity or shot to try and bring it to the USA.
I want to go back to Danny now that we got him. We think we have him squared up here. Danny, let's go back to you as a driver again and running a world championship event. How was it for you going over to the Worlds for the first time? We pause this show for a quick commercial break. Stay tuned for more here on the EKN Radio Network. It's a multi-time world champion, and it's a SuperKarts USA Super Nationals winner. It is Sodi Kart. And starting in 2023, the Sodi brand has found a new home here in the US. Sodi Racing USA is the new exclusive importer of the Sodi Kart chassis line under the Karting Distribution banner, led by industry veteran Terry Germanovich. The French manufacturer Sodi Kart is a leader within the karting industry, offering a wide range of products and services. The Sodi Racing chassis line offers product in classes from Mini to KZ, all based on years of development and championship seasons around the world. Sodi Racing USA has already begun establishing its dealer network, working with the Karting Collective on the West Coast and recently signing PK Sport to serve as a dealer and the official race team on the East Coast. Visit Sodi-Racing-USA.com to learn more about the Sodi Kart chassis line or call 954-634-5111 to become part of the Sodi Racing USA network today. Sodi Kart, the world leader in the karting industry.
Are you ready to go from karts to cars? Since 1975, the Skip Barber Racing School has taken great drivers and made them champions. Today, we're proud to welcome the next generation of winners. Make the transition from karts to cars with the Skip Barber Formula Race Series. You'll compete at the most iconic tracks in America. Race weekends include your very own equalized Formula 4 race car, a professional crew, expert instruction, video and data analysis, hospitality, and more. This is the place to fulfill your dream of becoming a champion. Sign up today by calling 866-932-1949 or visit us at skipbarber.com.
Motor mounts. They keep your engine attached to your chassis, right? The answer is, they're much more important than that. Your motor mount is critical in transferring 100% of the power from your engine through to your tires and the racetrack. You need this to get on the podium each and every time you race. Odenthal Racing Products is here for you, providing the best motor mounts on the karting market today, all designed to make sure you're using all the horsepower you pay for. Odenthal Racing Products is a family-owned and operated business with decades of karting experience in providing products with unmatched quality and value for our racing community. The Pro Series mount for 2-cycle engines, which is available in 0, 5, and 8-degree inclinations, provides a rigid structure to help keep vibration to a minimum without adding too much weight to your setup. The 4-cycle Easy Set system is one of the most popular mounts for the Briggs & Stratton 206 power plant. Multiple mounting holes provide the most adjustability depending on your chassis and seat placement. To ensure a tight fit to your chassis, our ORP wedge clamps get the job done, and they feature a number of design updates to provide a lower profile and lighter weight. The clamps are available from 28mm to 32mm in both standard and Euro style sizes. And now, Odenthal has also revolutionized the karting industry with its new Easy GP camera mounting system. Designed to mount anywhere on your chassis with 1 or 2 cameras, the ORP Easy GP camera mount is your solution to capture that onboard winning moment. Head to odenthalracing.com and find a dealer near you. Odenthal Racing Products, proudly made in the USA. Thank you for listening to the EKN Radio Network. We now join the show already in progress.
Is it better now?
There you go.
Yeah, perfect. There we go.
I bought the cheap. It's not the actual AirPods. I bought the cheap one.
You would think winning the Super Nationals, you could afford AirPods, right?
Man, I live with my wife in Florida. I can't afford freaking AirPods. Come on.
All right. So let's talk about your World Championship experience.
Yeah, so my first one was in 2010 in La Conca. By far one of the coolest tracks I've ever experienced. That first year I went was before they put new asphalt in it, because after that I went in KZ, almost killed myself. But it was a great event. I remember in the Senior Max, I qualified second. I was actually really quick all weekend long. I finished fourth in the race. And then my second one was in Portugal, where Gary's going Portimao. I struggled quite a bit. Very, very, very long straightaway. As long as Super Nuts, or even longer. Yeah, my engine wasn't great. Gary was there. He was helping me out a lot, actually. I finished, I think, like 11th or 10th, something like that. So I definitely experienced the European level in road tax. I only did one KZ race with Euan back in 2013 and 2014 in Genk. And actually, Gary was racing against me in KZ2. And I remember Gary and I finished 1-2 in the practice before qualifying.
I've still got the burns from the angle grinder trying to lighten your car.
Yeah, for sure. Exactly. And, I remember like it was yesterday. I was supposed to race with Pedro Hilbrand as my teammate, and he decided not to race at the end, or Mr. Tonini decided not to. So I got his Maxter TaxApp engines. I remember because I went to the trailer. It said Hilbrand, didn't say Formal, and I got his engines. Very, very good. So I was very, very quick. I had a couple mechanical failures. I remember Euan was kind of mad that day. I remember when my engine fell off in qualifying, and I remember the mechanic too. I'm not going to mention. He knows who it was, but my engine fell off in qualifying, so I qualified like 105th or something. So it wasn't the best experience, but it was incredible to race against all those guys. I was not in the KZ categories, in the KZ2, but still, the top 40 of the guys in that moment where the level was so high. So yeah, for sure, to have a world championship in the USA would definitely help everyone from the USA be closer, how Gary has mentioned a couple times. 100%, the grip level, learning the tracks. Again, most of these tracks you go in Europe, all these guys have 1.5 million laps. It'd be like, them coming to me and racing me in Orlando or Homestead, the advantage I got, or Gary in Sonoma, or Euan in Speed Sports. It's just like, for them, all these European tracks, they get so many laps, and the teams know the track so well. They know at this time it does this, what you have to do at this time, So having a world championship as a driver here, would be fantastic. The only thing I would definitely see is people saying, you want a world championship, but you want it in the US. I don't know why, but everyone has Europe as such a pedestal, and it is. Don't get me wrong, it is the highest level of karting in the world. But as Gary said, 20 years ago, when I first started racing go-karts, you would see the OK class, let's say back then when I watched, it was Super KF. That was real drivers. Those are 20-year-old, 25-year-old factory full paid drivers to run that class. Now you see OK, the 13-year-old kids, about 5 or 6 in the whole grade are getting paid, and the rest of them are paying. They're not really full factory drivers. It's changed. The evolution of drivers have changed a lot. Back then, Super KF had Artigo. All these guys that are the pinnacle of racing. When you, at least in my generation, Euan is a little older than me, so he saw all the Danilo Rossi's and Torres and all these guys. But those generations are kind of gone. They only do KZ now. And even KZ is becoming a young driver class too. So the European level is still high. Don't get me wrong, very, very high. It's just not. I don't see it like it used to be. Like, man, these guys like Gary. When Gary raced, holy cow, man! Just look at the names of the guys Gary raced. Are all the legends that we talk about? At the top of their game with the top factories. So yes, I think the level of USA has gone up, but at the same time, I think the level of Europe has come down. In a way of who you're racing against. You're racing against really fast kids before you're racing against really fast, gentle, let's say.
Gentle, yeah.
Correct. Yeah. Guys like me, like my age, I know. I'm still like the kid here, but I'm 28 next week. Actually, on Sunday, I turned 28. I'm getting up there too. But,
Yeah, I forgot. We've got the same birthday.
Yeah, exactly. We're both on the 24th. But my point being is it's so different to 10 years ago when 28 was actually your peak. You're getting there. Now, man, like Jesus, the guy that won the KZ2 World Cup was like 14 years old. Like, you didn't see that 10 years ago. And again, I bet you he's bloody fast. Don't get me wrong. But for me, you can't compare a 14-year-old to a peak 4A or a peak Artigo or a peak Gary Cat or a peak Gary, Gary Carlton. You can't, in my opinion. It's so different now. So yeah, the World Championship bringing it to US is going to help, but I guarantee it that Gary's guys with his equipment won't be too far off of the World Championship in KZ2. I don't think so. I really don't. Yeah. So again, I would love to be a World Championship here because probably the only chance I do for me to race one again. Luckily I'm trying to step away a little bit from karting, but I would definitely come back for a U.S. World Championship because, like Gary said, a grip level here would definitely benefit me being so tall and so big. than going anywhere in Europe where the grip level's so high.
You know what's so wildly interesting about this is, and the reason why when David came to me with this idea and sent me the article to edit and look through it, we talked about having let's push this. Let's talk to discussion. I've been doing this for 30 years now. Obviously I was at that Formula C World Championship race. We covered like one of the first issues of Shifter Guard Illustrated, but this is not a discussion we've had here in the last 20 years. It's not been something that really has been brought out to the forefront. And I think that, with David, writing that article, penning it, we've had a lot of discussion. I've got a lot of emails. I know David has as well. So again, for you guys to come and join us here and bring us a lot of the information, I really appreciate it. It's a lot of insight. I don't think that we're done in terms of this discussion. David, you can talk about it a little bit, but Keith Freber works very closely with ACUS as well. It always has. You've been talking to him a little bit. We've connected with him about the Academy Trophy, but also on this topic as well.
Yeah, he's essentially the American liaison for FIA. He works with USAC Racing. He is essentially the representative that sits in with the CIK FIA meetings each month. So he has his insight into ideas and stuff like that. Unfortunately, he wasn't able to join us tonight. But he is definitely going to kind of listen into what we've talked about here, and again, kind of further continue this discussion. And hopefully he can be kind of the voice, the kind of the ignition to kind of get this started and talking with, the ASN here, ACUS and USAC Racing to kind of get this going. And of course, it's just going to take little bits here and there. I think, we've gotten some interest in Europe. Obviously, Euan's talked about Mr. Tonini and other people as well. I got Ian, who does the announcing for WSK, just messaged me today about this stuff. He goes, what about going back to Jacksonville? He goes, is that racetrack even there still? I go, yeah, for foil cycle racing, that's about it. But yeah, aside from what Gary talked about, the WSK race that happened in New Jersey, we haven't had anything, internationally here aside from the Super Nationals. But again, that's our one-off big one race that it's kind of like it's almost like the All-Star race. That's kind of how we look at it, where, it's that one big race that we have at the end of the year. But again, I think as we kind of began, the U.S. market, it's kind of where everything began, and it's a big part of today's current global market. And I think having some type of international event coming back here would be key. And I think, as Mike mentioned, if it's not, every 5 years something comes here, whether it be KZ, and then we do Rotax, and then we do another KZ a couple of years after that. I think that's kind of hopefully what we can kind of tumble down and go towards as we continue this discussion.
Well, listen, the bottom line is it's been 10 years since we've had a major event. 2013 at Knoll, the Rotax Grand Finals. We talked about that. You mentioned the Formula C World Championships in 1998. I think we go back to 96 or 97 when we had there was a 3-race series over here, and we did a race up at Mosport at their driver development a track that they built there. Both Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton were racing there, I think, in JICA back then. So that's obviously it's if we can get this going, get it rolling, with the amount of market share that the U.S. commands in the global karting market, it's crucial, I think, to come here on a more regular basis. Let's wrap this thing up. Let's go around the horn one time. Euan, let's start with you. Final thoughts in terms of an importer. Your thoughts on getting a world championship event here?
Like I said before, I would love to have a world championship event here, and obviously I've done over the years that many world championships over in Europe and around the world, that it would be kind of something really, really good for the US market and to make the US market known to the rest of the world. Would it be beneficial with the categories? Who knows? Me personally, I don't see the advantage of using the OK Junior and OK Senior if we don't use the classes here. KZ, possibly another thing. But, I'm all for a U.S. World Championship.
Mike Adams, Castle Motorsports Park. I know you said you've done a little bit of research already. Have we piqued your interest to dive a little deeper, maybe?
Oh, absolutely. I definitely want to delve into this winter and see where we would be. Get a real feel for what the investment would be, what it would do to, what it would take to maintain. I'd love to showcase Newcastle to the world personally.
Yeah.
You know, I mean, obviously I'm biased. Like I said, anywhere in the US would be great, but I'm biased and would love to showcase what we have, you know, and what Mark built.
And I just picture this, like they win on Sunday and then we take them Monday morning and go to Indianapolis Motor Speedway. And we know a few people there that might be able to hook us up with doing photos there. Like, could you imagine a world champion, you know, kind of like the Jason Bulls, the Super Nats I did, you know, we got to go out on the UNLV field at Sam Boyd Stadium. That was like one of the most memorable experiences I had. But could you imagine like a KZ or KZ2 world champion sitting there on their yard of bricks, holding their world championship trophy with the cart right there? Like that, I just picture that. Or even having, you know, we haven't really talked about it much, but you know, the kind of the festivities of the event, having the world champion or all the drivers come, you know, a couple of days early, taking them to Indianapolis Motor Speedway or some type of a tourist attraction where the event's held. Like, I think that's another aspect that we can look at and you know, kind of promote and have that ability to do that. I think Indianapolis and Newcastle would be kind of a check mark for a lot of those drivers.
Let's roll back to Gary here now. Gary, you've raced in a World Championship event before. You're going to take the GFC brand there in 2024, which I think is absolutely thrilling. I'm so excited about that. I think everybody in the U.S. community is going to be cheering for you guys overseas. And what would it mean to you to have one on home turf, right? Home soil.
Yeah, it'd be a great opportunity, especially for a company and any other race team and company that's here in the U.S. that for whatever category they would decide to be able to part of. I mean, I know when the WSK came to New Jersey, there was a lot of drivers that ended up sampling that category, and I think it was Tristan that the Grand, right? He was on the podium, so that was.
Yeah.
I don't know. I don't remember if he did the whole championship. I don't think he did, but I mean, it's a great opportunity for anyone. That, I mean, you could, who's to say, you know, race teams, and they don't have to be factory supported teams. You could have privateer teams that are here in the States that could do well at a race and get their name known worldwide and also probably generate business. So when they come here for the races, either USPKS or SCUSA or even Super Nats, that people might go to them rather than going to another bigger team or importer team that, so they could have, you know, obviously have a good chance. I mean, touching on my doubts, I mean, from Euan's experience, it sounds like it wouldn't be a big deal. It's more maybe doubts on the track side, but I mean, it just takes one person with a dream to make it happen, and I'm sure the whole U.S. karting community would get behind it. I think first, everyone, it's easy to doubt, like I did, you know, like I in the beginning of the show, but I mean, if it did happen, let's say in the perfect world, in our dream world, it did happen, we'd all be running there to go do it. So
that's exactly right. That's true. Yeah, I think there's a ton of hurdles. It's going to cost money, like we said. And there's obviously huge positives for it. Bottom line, there's not really any negatives. Danny, let's wrap things up with you. Like you said, you're kind of focusing on your Lamborghini program and your program you have in cars now. Congrats on that, of course. Congrats on the Super Nats win. But you said this race will bring you back, right? For sure.
No, 100%. You know, I still have a decent schedule with RPG next year. Mike and I actually have a phone call tomorrow just to see schedule what races I could do. I know I could do November races and I could do some in the beginning of the year. But yeah, a world championship is something I've never participated in. A CIK FIA world championship, I would love to do it. In KZ, you know, can I make the weight? Probably not. Am I going to have to run 10 pounds overweight? Probably yes. It is what it is. At the end of the day, it'd be something huge for so many people here in the U.S. to be able to participate in something that we might not be able to do in a competitive level. Like Gary's going with his own team, but as Gary and you and all know, if you go as a private guy, a privateer, you're not going to get the best of Franco. You're not going to get the best of Miami. You're not going to get the best of anyone, you know. So maybe you come here, and Gary has his own engine program that we all know is very, very good. His own chassis that's very, very good. So, you know, you bring it to the U.S., you give him a little bit more of advantage than if he goes to Portugal, where, again, I don't know how many test days Gary's going to do, but I guarantee it's going to be less than what other guys are going to do. So I think it'd be huge. I'd be definitely down for it. I know every team, small, big, little, will try to participate. Probably going to be record fields for us to be participating in. But again, it's so much. I'm just looking at it as a driver side, not a business side, and I know it's so much more difficult. You know, the FIA is not the easiest people to work with, and you know, getting them to come to the U.S. where they really don't. I don't want to say it, but they don't probably like us very much. It'd be a difficult thing.
Well, we do have 3 Formula One races now, so they kind of do like us.
Well, yeah, but Andretti's not getting into F1
Good
either.
point. Good point.
So, you know.
Well, listen, the
right?
introduction of the KZ Masters category, I think, too, was big for the World Championships. You know, we saw a number of drivers go over there, Jordan Mustard being one of them. I have a feeling that because we've got so many solid Masters drivers here, I don't think getting the numbers to people is going to be anything. Again, you've talked all about it. It's really comes down to, number one, getting the CIKFIA on board, getting USAC and our side on board here, and finding a track that's willing to put in the investment. That's really the bottom line.
No, for sure. But the other thing is the financial investment that would come from, let's say, the general federation part, because, like I said, it's not just down to the track. Don't get me wrong. It's also from the actual the federation that can actually entice the people to come here, and sadly, you'll do that financially. You know, because it was like when all the other years that we've traveled to Asia and we went to Macau, to Japan, all these places, the federations in each country, or even when we went to Bahrain or wherever, the federations have always put up money to entice the people here. May it be paying for logistics with containers, may it be paying for shipments, may it be paying for air travels or hotels for each driver. But each federation put up a lot of money, like a lot of money over the years. Especially when I remember when we went to Macau. Macau was incredible because they used to literally come up to you halfway through the race weekend, getting towards Saturday possibly. And then afterwards, literally, the secretary from the track who would organize all the federation stuff, she would literally come up and give you an envelope for each driver. And there was like, I don't know, I can't remember. There was one year where it was like $1,000 or something like that. But they gave $1,000 to each driver in the paddock. And it was cool because it shows their support and how much they want to entice it. So, you know, the big decision over here in the US, where is it coming from? Because at the end of the day, we don't have a federation.
True enough. Yeah, true enough. Those are the
one thing to touch on as a driver. I guess I've driven in every karting race, you know, known to man. And I will say, even though the last time I did do the World Championships, I was starting not in a great spot, let's just say, you know, not in a winning spot but you sit there on the grid when they do they put everyone on the grid and you look around, and even though I was starting not where I would like to be, I even look back and forth and you look at it, it's just, you're with the best of the best on the best. I mean, it is a very neat feeling to be a part of that, even being if you're a team owner, mechanic, family member, driver. I mean, when you realize you're at the pinnacle of our sport and at that event, so to speak, an event like that with the name of it, you could really have it anywhere in any track. When you do have the name, like Danny did touch on, it does have a different feel, at least for the driver, but I guarantee for mechanics and everything else. I mean, how many times have you gone to one particular racetrack? I'm sure Euan can touch on it too. I mean, you go to Andreville a million times for the French Championship, but when it's the World Championship in Andreville, you're on the grid. It's a different. It's different.
Sure.
It's
different. Gary, that feeling that you're talking about,
it's hard to describe.
It's hard to describe, but like even when you're as a mechanic, when you're on the grid and you're on the front row at a World Championship, ready to push off for the final, like it's a feeling that you got inside that it's so hard to describe. You know, and don't get me wrong, I've been all over the place, but to get that feeling, it's hard.
It's hard to find.
You didn't feel that way, Euan, in October with me?
I have to admit, I got quite upset when I was watching your race.
He was emotionally invested, David.
He was.
I got quite upset watching your race, especially when that did hit you off. I was not a happy camper. I really thought we were going. I thought we were going for podium, but I was not happy.
That's right. That's right.
Well, guys, listen, thank you so much for taking the time out of a Wednesday night. We appreciate it. Obviously, a great way to kind of extend the discussion, the topic that David put out there in that column of his. And I think there's going to be more discussion happening. And we do appreciate it again. Happy holidays to all you guys. I know we're getting ready to roll into the weekend here in Christmas. We'll see you guys around the corner, and looking forward to a great 2024.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you guys for having us.
Merry Christmas, everybody.
Great
Thanks.
stuff. Well, David Cole, all it took was an article, and it's a motion. It's a movement now. People are kind of talking about it. It's something. And listen, that was from Euan, from Gary, from Mike, and from Danny. Just great insight from different areas of the sport.
Yeah, we accomplished what I set out to do. We got different viewpoints from different angles of this event. Different opinions, different thoughts, different ideas, and different concerns. That's obviously it. We could go blazing towards this, but you got to think about this and think about that. And that's kind of what I wanted to do with this roundtable, because, mine was just lighting the fuse. That's what I wanted to do. And I think we accomplished that. So now, it's how can we continue this momentum going forward? So that's the motivation right now.
Well, will be more emails, more talking coming, folks. Like we've said, we've reached out to Keith Freeber already. So it's something that at least is in motion. We're going to talk about it. And when you start talking, things can get done. We'll see whether or not we find ourselves with a world champion event sometime in the next 5 to 10 years. Again, thank you to our guests for joining us today. It was awesome for them to be here. Great insight for sure. And of course, David, for writing that article that really has dialed things in. We do appreciate you tuning in. Our very first edition of the Roundtable. We're going to do a lot more of them in 2024. If we don't talk to you before the end of the season, folks, happy holidays. Merry Christmas from all of us here at eKartingNews.com. We hope you have a fantastic Christmas and, of course, New Year's after that. We'll see you in 2024. On behalf of David Cole, my name is Rob Howden. Bye for now.